Welcome to the Saturday Morning Nerd Show. I am your host, Marcus Blake, and joined with me, as always, is the brewing sailor, Mr. Brendan Smith, and from the Electric Jellyfish podcast, Chad Womack. Today, we talk about Season 1 of Ahsoka, and including in our discussion, Disney's biggest mistake with Star Wars. So we're going to jump right into it, and we're going to start off with Ahsoka. Chad, what did you think of it?
When we first laid eyes on Anakin and Ahsoka in full Clone Wars garb, and the kid they got playing Ahsoka as a young Ahsoka probably couldn't be more perfect for the role.
True.
I mean, yes, we've seen her as young Gamora. Yes, we saw her getting dragged through a Jurassic forest by Adam Driver in 65. We saw her in
Still had
we
a
saw,
lot to read.
yeah, don't waste your time. We saw her be the pretty much like the one of the main protagonists in the Barbie movie. But her in Ahsoka is sublime. That may be, out of all of the casting decisions that they made, that they kind of got it, but they kind of didn't. They missed this and they missed that. With her, they nailed it. They absolutely nailed her casting. And I have come so far in my admiration of Hayden Christensen, it's ridiculous. As stiff, and I mean, I know that his nickname was always in episodes 2 and 3, they were always calling him Mannequin Skywalker because he was so wooden. He has grown into this character so well. I didn't think it was possible.
Well, it helps when you have good dialogue.
Yeah, and I mean, and we got glimpses of it in Obi-Wan, but he's Anakin. They've got me. If this Filoni thing that they keep announcing over and over again, that they've given him, I don't know how much of it's true, that they've given him the green light to do a Clone Wars trilogy, a live action Clone Wars trilogy, take my money. Go ahead, just take it. Because I'm sold.
I'll take it under one condition. Will you please bring back Nick Gillard to train everybody else how to use a lightsaber?
Mm-hmm.
Because the only people in that show that knew how to use a lightsaber properly were Hayden Christensen, who was trained by the aforementioned Mr. Gillard, and Diana Lee Inosanto, and that's because her father's Dan Inosanto and her godfather's Bruce friggin' Lee.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, everybody else, and I really like Rosario Dawson as an actor, and I even very much approved of her casting as Ahsoka. But she looks like she needs a lot of lightsaber training. She looks like she's moving in cement compared to Diana Lee Inosanto. And it was very hard for me to divorce myself from the fact that I know Ahsoka is going to win this fight, because my eyes are telling me that Diana Lee Inosanto's character should kill her.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I can't argue with you there.
To get back to the thing about Hayden Christensen, who would have thought that all these years later we'd be talking about Hayden Christensen being one of the best parts of a Star Wars movie or a series?
No kidding.
I'm really not all that shocked, and I'll tell you why. Because I always felt bad for both him and Jake Lloyd, because as we've discussed many times, Lucas is a great idea man. He's a great story guy, but he's not a very good dialogue guy.
Yeah.
And I've always felt that the dialogue kind of let them both down.
What was Carrie's quote? George, you can write this shit, but you can't say it.
Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah. So, especially with the maturity of age, and the fact that he's done a lot of stuff, and he's also done a lot of he's done a lot of stage acting over the last 20 years too.
Kind of got himself seasoned.
Yeah. So the fact that he's got more, I don't want to say competent, because I actually think the story wasn't that great.
He's just skilled at his craft. I'm
talking about the dialogue. The dialogue was less. Well, it was less George. Let's put it that way.
It was less stilted.
Yeah. The arcing story, I think George does a better job, but the dialogue, this was better dialogue, easier dialogue, more pleasing dialogue to the ear, if you will. And then you add 20 years of him honing his craft, and no, I'm not really shocked at all. But I would love to see him fighting, Ray Park and having Sam Witwer, voice, because if I got Hayden Christensen versus Ray Park with Sam Witwer voicing Maul, yeah, okay, you can sell me a ticket to that, sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have never thought that Hayden Christian was a bad actor because he did a movie right before he did Star Wars with Kevin Kline called Life is a House.
Yeah.
It's a really great movie, and I can see why he was chosen to be a young, kind of pretentious, disturbed Anakin and all that. But when you've given bad dialogue and it's hard to deliver and there's no way to clean it up, then it doesn't matter how good of an actor you are. I mean, even Pacino is going to look bad. Okay.
Also, you're a 20. He's a 20-something kid. He was, in Star Wars.
Right.
He was playing the chosen one, both literally and figuratively. So I cut him a lot of slack. Of the last two movies, he was nowhere near the list of my complaints.
No, I mean, there's a lot to complain about, and I always liked the idea that Charlie Hunnam was also in leading contention to be a young Anakin, and I think he would have done a great job too. But we'd still probably be talking about him and it's not as good because of dialogue. That's the only point I'm trying to make. Seeing him as the seasoned warrior, his expressions, everything about him. I mean, that was the best episode of this season. And I loved him in Obi-Wan. I just, the flashback scene, and of course, just the scene of the half mask of him in the mask, hearing his voice and Vader's was one of the best things of Obi-Wan.
You didn't kill Anakin. I did. I was like, Jesus.
I know. I mean, kudos to him. But yeah, there's a lot to kind of be upset about. I'll be honest with you. You guys know me. I always grade things a little bit higher than everybody. But even I didn't go higher than a 7 on this.
Yeah.
And part of it for me is what we talked about privately. Brendan hit the nail on the head. Filoni is writing 22-minute episodes and trying to stretch them out to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
His writing has not matured past the episodic cartoons that he came up on.
Yeah.
And because, I mean, before working with Favreau, all he's ever done is Star Wars and some Avatar, The Last Airbender. So he really has no experience writing longer form dialogue, which kind of worries me about him doing a full-length feature film if he can't even fill out a 45-minute runtime. The other problem I had with this was wasting an entire 8-episode season on trying to prevent Thrawn from coming back to the galaxy when we all knew he was coming back to the galaxy. There's no suspense there. We know for the rest of the story to progress, he has to come back. Okay, so we knew he was coming back, and personally, the way I would have done it I would have had Hera, Sabine, and Ahsoka in the first 3 episodes following the mystery of where it led, just like they were doing. And I would have been cross-cutting it with Baylan and Morgan during her thing, but it would have not been running concurrently. When they got out to that first planet where it was the jumping off point to Peridia, instead of finding them there about to leave and downloading the information, they'd have already gone and come back with Thrawn. And then Thrawn wipes out what little New Republic forces there are, and he just sets off a terrifying alarm bells and sets the whole galaxy into a nervous breakdown because Thrawn is back, and oh shit, they weren't just joking around. And Hera and Ahsoka escape back to the New Republic to tell everybody, which just works in Thrawn's favor because it spreads fear. And now you've really set up an actual thing that our allies have to overcome, that we know they eventually will overcome because that's the hero's journey. And so you've got to the meat of it faster. You've actually set up something that is an obstacle that can be overcome. And you've also set up Thrawn to be a legitimate threat instead of having Thrawn saying things like, "Don't underestimate the Jedi, send 2 TIE fighters after them." or oh, your plan failed. No, it didn't. I intended it to work out that way. And then put your hands behind your back and walk away. Like, you can't have everything
You're not Pee Wee Herman. I meant to do that.
Yeah, you can't have everything you planned fail and then smugly act like, oh no, I intended that for to happen. No, you didn't. Like, that's not believable.
No.
Well, this goes into my biggest complaint. I don't think it's the story itself so much as it does come down to the editing. And it's what I said about Obi-Wan, hence why I cut it down to 3 hours and like my version better. This literally probably could have been a 3-hour movie in itself. And I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying that Thrawn should get back to the galaxy we know early on. Or at least if you're going to end it where you ended it, don't take me nearly over 6 hours to get there. Okay. It's just long and drawn out and fucking boring.
Yeah. There's no sense of dread. It's just a sense of boredom.
Yeah,
right.
And and the other thing too is, and this goes back to the whole stretching it out. In the first episode, or one of the first episodes, no, I think it was the first episode, and Ahsoka's in that map room, and she's just staring at things. It's like she doesn't even say anything for the first 5 minutes, and she's just staring at maps on the wall, and then figures out, as it's this weird Indiana Jones-esque scene without any quippy Indiana Jones dialogue.
Right.
And then she fights a bunch of droids, and the droids say, instead of just blowing themselves up, saying, "We are initiating self-destruct," and they must have taken 5 minutes to friggin' self-destruct because she ran 3 miles outside of that thing, and it goes off with the destruction of a nuclear blast, almost like a tactical nuke, but she just manages to jump on the ship and get away. Why is it taking so long to get on with it?
Yeah, where is the chase and how can we cut to it?
Yes, exactly. It's just the way it was paced. It was
painful.
I'm sorry, but glaciers move faster.
Yeah, it was painfully slow.
Again, why couldn't if you want to tell this story, then do movies. Put them out in the theater. I mean, Star Wars belongs in there. And I get the whole argument that they're so afraid to do that, considering, they've had what they consider box office disasters. I mean, The Rise of Skywalker wasn't a disaster. They made over $1 billion. Okay. But compared to what they're used to, so from the numbers standpoint, when you're losing money, sure. And you have to get people.
This would have lost money.
Yeah, is it easier to hide your losses?
100% it's easier.
Yeah, that's got to be their reason.
If you look at the stream now, granted, we're only 3 weeks into because the streaming minutes come out 4 weeks in arrears. But the streaming minutes for Ahsoka are no better than they are for Andor. And Andor was the lowest by far. You're looking at about half on average of what Kenobi's episodes got, and about 2/3 less than what Mando usually gets.
Right.
So and they spent $20 million an episode on this, which, by the way, where the hell was that $20 million in your guys' favorite episode of the Clone Wars? I know they're trying to make it look like a dream sequence where it's just all haze and yellow in the background, but it's just okay, to me it just looked like, oh, you didn't bother to put up a planet background on the volume. It just looked cheap.
Yeah, you just turn on some fog machines and some colored lights in the studio.
Yeah, and it's I'm sorry, but for $20 million an episode, I'm gonna need better. Yeah,
I was thinking the same thing. I said, why does this look like it was done in a school gym?
Right.
I'm and then there were some the little things that I noticed too that just drove me nuts. If you're gonna tell me that Sabine is the next great Jedi, which first of all, I have a really hard time, believing that anyway, just from everything else I've watched in Star Wars. But if you're going to tell me that, when they have the big entrance scene to where they're all 3 of them standing next to each other with lightsabers deflecting blaster bolts, you can't have the first blaster bolt go off Sabine's face. Ding! Seriously, she just whiffs on it and it hits her in the face.
Yeah, it's almost like
I get that she's a Mandalorian and she has armor, but if you're telling me she's supposed to be going to become this wonderfully skilled Jedi, she at least needs to be able to deflect the blaster bolt.
Okay, but you do know this. Okay, I'm not disagreeing with you, but you do know that there's one thing that always happens with a Jedi when they first really discovered their power and they've gotten over that hump. It's being able to get the lightsaber back. Okay, Luke did it in the cave. Rey did it by getting the lightsaber away from Kylo Ren. Hers is that moment where she crosses the threshold and now she's all powerful, is getting the lightsaber. And then she has enough power to help push Ezra onto the ship. I'm not saying it's good writing. I'm just saying that they're kind of following into that tradition. And
Yeah, that's one tradition we can let go.
No, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that I get what Filoni is thinking, knowing Star Wars. But at some point, you've got to come out with that she does have power, and it shouldn't be discovered, after the heat of battle or anything like that. There's a different way to get into the Jedi lore and discovering her Force abilities. I don't think the story is bad. I don't think it's great. It doesn't feel like anything I want to go back. I can't watch all these episodes again and binge watch it.
The other thing I didn't understand is, okay, this is very much, can we all agree this is very much Rebels Season 5?
Yes.
Well, Filoni said it once.
Okay, great. Then Dave, you're gonna have to spend some time in the first episode doing a little bit of exposition to telling all the normies who the hell these characters are.
Absolutely.
Because nobody knows who Ezra is outside of people like me that have rapidly watched the Clone Wars and Rebels, which, granted, there are a lot of us, but in the grand scheme of things, it's a niche audience.
Yeah, it ain't a lot of us. Yeah.
Maybe there's a couple million, okay? But when you're talking about Star Wars, which is one of the largest fan bases on the planet, or at least used to be, not everybody watched, not everybody had Disney XD. Not everybody watched Clone Wars on Netflix when it was on Netflix. So you're gonna have to let some of these people know what the hell is going on.
Hey,
that's what the Crawl was so great at doing. You could watch any of the Star Wars movies and not have to watch the previous ones because you get a rundown of what happened.
Well, you didn't need to be like Obi-Wan and give me a 10-minute summarization of the prequel movies to bring me up to speed, but it would have actually worked a little bit in the favor for Ahsoka.
Yeah,
would have helped the pacing. It's kind of ironic that it didn't work with Obi-Wan, but it would have actually helped with this show.
There were only two characters that I really enjoyed in this show, and that was David Tennant as Hu Yang.
Yep.
He was the only one that talked sense throughout the whole damn episode. Because I'd be sitting there screaming at Ahsoka and Sabine for doing stupid shit, and so at Hu Yang, and I'm like, see, even the droid who's been around for 500 fucking years knows.
Right.
And then Ray Stevenson, God rest his soul, who was awesome. But then, and here's where I think Dave Filoni spent too much time with J.J. Abrams during the making of the sequel trilogy. You notice this show's got a lot of mystery boxes.
Yeah.
That none of them were resolved by the end of, Balin, I trained you to be something more, Shin. Okay. What? We don't know. And we won't know because she apparently is just going to live as a tribal leader now. He's searching for some power. What is it? We don't know.
Unless you have watched that very specific episode about Mortis and all that, then you don't know.
I did, and it totally went right by me. I'm like, okay, I know I should recognize this, but it's not clicking.
Also,
I had to look it up and remind myself too. And
the finale, I'm sorry, how many pop culture references are they going to work into the finale? Because I got at least 3. And the 3. Well, the first one's easy. The Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord. Really, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Okay, so C.S. Lewis. The second one, could you make the Mortis gods look any more like the Argonath? Okay.
No kidding. I said that.
And number 3, did you notice the Back to the Future one?
Oh,
where they fall off the ledge and then they rise up on the ship?
Yeah.
By the way, who says you can't reuse a Lord of the Rings set?
So, all they did was close the hand to a fist.
Oh, I know oh my God, it was so hilarious. The first time I saw them, like, So is that a subliminal message that I need to go back and watch Lord of the Rings? I mean, I will.
Yeah, and I don't really need one. I'm just, I usually
I
do
don't
it
need
once
excuse.
or twice a year.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
So, and by the way, and how are you going to cast Amos from The Expanse and put him in a stormtrooper outfit the whole time?
Oh, God. Yeah, I kind of well, I mean, if you can do it to Kerry Russell.
Yeah.
Here's the bottom line about Ahsoka. You have the makings of a good story that kind of wraps up and brings a good bad guy in Ray Stevenson. Loved him. Yes. Awesome. And you had all the makings. And Grant, thank you for bringing Lars Mikkelsen back as the live action Thrawn. He's great. But you're right. There's no buildup. There's no intensity. We know what's going to happen. We know that eventually you're going to defeat Thrawn because you've made these sequel movies. And then we're supposed to wonder, hey, well, I guess this is what happens to Ahsoka and Sabine and why they're not in the sequel movies and all that because they're off in another galaxy. And
oh no, I don't buy that at all. I think I
agree with you.
They'll be back in the regular galaxy within 2 to 3 episodes of Ahsoka season 2. And you know how they're going to do it? They're going to follow Balin, whoever they get to replace him. I'm hoping for Graham McTavish because it looks like he looks very similar. And I think the actors know each other and have a really good respect for each other. I think Graham McTavish would be honored to do it, but that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. They're going to find their way into the world between worlds, and then they're going to find their way out of the world between worlds right back in the galaxy, and this will have absolutely no consequences. Because that is modern Hollywood writing in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not understanding lore and all the stuff that you have to go through to get back. You're right. There will be no... I don't necessarily disagree with you on that.
Because Filoni's not going to write his out of the show.
There's a lot of missed opportunities, and the sad thing
that's a great way to sum up the whole show. Missed opportunities.
Yeah. And it's not really the cast. I mean, the guy that got to play Ezra, really good. I like the actress who's playing Sabine. I mean, they cast it very well. But what does it say when you've drawn out the writing or you've drawn out the story to make it longer? That's not necessary.
And there is the one thing I had, and maybe this is a byproduct of that writing, but there was no chemistry between Ezra and Sabine, and their reunion was just so.
Oh hey,
yeah, hey, how are you? It's been 10 years.
Yeah, there's
By
no
the way,
way.
you know that guy you tried to keep out of the galaxy? Well, I just handed him the keys back to the other galaxy.
Yeah,
Sorry.
see, I still do disagree with you on that. I think that's just a calculated risk she made. Ahsoka even acknowledged it, and I think for them...
Oh, no, I think that's bad, right? That's not a calculated risk. That's putting that's putting your own wants and desires ahead of what's good for everybody else.
You mean that sometimes Jedi have selfish desires and don't
I 100%. But I get that. But trying to pawn it off as say it's a calculated risk to me is just absolute.
Damn, it's if we can get him to where it's easier to fight him. If all you're going to do is go to the other galaxy just to prevent him from leaving, and you're all going to be trapped, while I understand the sacrifice, I think that's kind of bad writing.
Yeah, so, well, they would have been literally better off doing nothing, because now they have Ezra back there, but they're minus Sabine and Ahsoka. If they had just stayed where they were,
okay, but
the galaxy would be in a better position than it is now.
Again, you understand what they're actually trying to set up. This is their version with making Heir to the Empire canon.
I get that, but my point remains the same. If you're making a calculated decision, your calculated decision would be to stay where you are and fortify your defenses because he's coming anyway. Because the likelihood of two people being able to stop a Star Destroyer and a giant hyperspace ring, not so great. If you're going to go with a calculated decision, the odds would be better to stay. The point is...
Okay, do you think that you're going to write do you think that he wasn't going to find a way back there to begin with?
Oh, I absolutely do. I 100% do, and that only fuels my point. Of course, Thrawn was going to find his way back. So why bother going to chase him to stop him? Stay here, fortify your defenses, and hey, by the way, have faith that Ezra is not a complete idiot and will sneak back onto the ship and get home on his own.
No, I will concede that point. Okay, but again, I think you get into the selfish desires of all of your characters, and there hasn't been a Jedi or a character that hasn't been a little bit selfish.
And that's fine, and I'm okay with that. But then Sabine needs to be called on that by Ahsoka and Ezra, and not just be like, "Oh, it's fine."
No,
a calculated risk. No, it wasn't. It was a selfish choice, and they don't call her on it.
No, you're missing the point. That's what season 2 is all about.
Yeah. Well, at this point, it'll be with Filoni's writing. It'll be season 3 because it's so damn slow.
Right. At this point, you might as well just make a movie and be done with it. But again, that's just one of the things
I thought that was the plan, actually.
It is. It is eventually. All of this is supposed to culminate with a theatrical event.
A big crossover of the Mandalorian and Ahsoka and everything
and everything else, and even probably Skeleton Crew, because Skeleton Crew takes place at the same time.
Well, I mean, to be honest, while that sounds exciting, there's only really one Star Wars movie I want to see, and it's called Rebel Moon.
Yeah. Well, ironically, the only Star Wars movie of the 3 that it's been announced that I was even remotely interested in was Dawn of the Jedi, and that's probably the one that's going to be the first one chopped.
Probably. All right, so this leads into the discussion of Disney's biggest mistake. Beyond all the writing and things that we've complained about up to this point, do you feel like their biggest mistake has been not actually drawing from the expanded universe itself and trying to rewrite canon?
It's certainly one of them.
I think we can all agree on what their biggest mistake is as far as Star Wars is concerned. And her initials are KK, but that's just...
Oh, I mean, that goes without saying.
Yeah, I mean,
we all get that. But beyond
and certainly sidelining Luke in this stuff is a bad idea. Because, look, the highest rated thing you've had are the episodes when Luke shows up.
Right.
Removing, and honestly, you know whose name we haven't heard of in like 2 years? Jon Favreau. And I really think that when they forced, and I think the whole reason of forcing Grogu back to the Mandalorian side so quickly was a merchandising issue. Because they were afraid that if they didn't have Grogu with Mandalorian and Mandalorian Season 3, that their merchandising was going to tank because it was the only thing that was selling. The only thing that's really selling for them is original trilogy, prequel trilogy, and Mando. The sequel trilogy stuff doesn't sell. Most of the stuff that's being released for Ahsoka is reused models from other releases. So it's not like the Hasbro and the toy companies are not betting big on Ahsoka. So you've got reused toys being sold. Like, they should have kept Luke with Grogu for a while. Now, if eventually Grogu wanted to go back with Mandalorian, that's fine. But even if you did it as an animated show, like even if you did, The Adventures of Luke and Grogu, I'm sure there's a better title out there for that. But, as an animated show, that would have been fine because people would have tuned in because it was Luke fucking Skywalker. And by the way, you could have had Mark Hamill voice it too. But, hey, what are you going to do? They didn't do that. So to me, the biggest problem is not delving into Luke's post story, not introducing Mara Jade, because they're doing Heir to the Empire, but it's Heir to the Empire in name only. Because you have Thrawn, it's like rewriting Othello, redoing the entire dramatis personae of Othello except for Othello, and then changing the entire story and saying, "Oh, it's the same play." Well, no. It's not. It's not even close.
It's just like Captain America: Civil War. But was it really?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
Well, what timeline?
It was neither civil nor war. Discuss. Talk amongst yourselves.
But again, that gets back to my original question. You're trying to reinvent the wheel when you've had all of this great lore that was already built upon in the books. Okay, why not use it? You essentially tried to do that with Rey and Kylo Ren. Instead, I mean, why not just make them the Skywalker twins and make it much more tragic, cathartic if she has to kill her brother? Okay, I guess.
When did they make that decision, Marcus, to jettison the EU?
That it was 2014, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. And how often do you know Disney to crab walk and say, "Oh yeah, we screwed up"?
Well, look how many things they've pulled from the EU. I mean, they've pulled a ton from the EU.
Yeah.
And by the way, Disney never apologizes. What they do is they just course correct and just say, "Oh,
right." They change names.
They Thrawn. Yeah, we meant to do that. We meant to fuck that up that way.
Right. Yeah. They change names a little bit here and there and make it. But again, you already have that. If you're going to do Heir to the Empire, then do the fucking Timothy Zahn books. I don't, and if you want to introduce Ahsoka and tie in Rebels to Luke and what's going on at the same time, more the merrier. That's great.
Yeah, and that's what we were all hoping would happen. Like people that are a fan of the first 6 movies and fans of Clone Wars and Rebels, we were hoping to get to see Ahsoka and Luke fight side by side. We were, hoping to see, Hera maybe in charge of Rogue Squadron.
Right.
With a young recast Dennis Lawson, get a young Wedge in there.
Yeah.
We were hoping for all of these things, and now we just get whatever this weird hodgepodge of a mix of Dave Filoni's stuff, George's stuff. And
the worst to me, the worst tragedy is the character of if I'm pronouncing this Shin Hati. You're basically making her Mara Jade without any of the good backstory behind it.
And I don't even think they're going to do that with her. I don't see where they're going with her character. I get where they're going with Balin's character. I get where they're going with Ahsoka and Sabine. I get everybody's character arc. She doesn't really have a character arc. She just asked a whole bunch of questions and then fucked off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not just, but I mean, I think for them, they're trying to remake what Mara Jade is as somebody that was
an apprentice to a dark side Force user,
right? And then we'll see the light. But it doesn't. But okay, if all you're going to establish is that she sees the light because of Sabine and Ahsoka, it doesn't have as much weight to it.
No.
Hey, you guys can start a girls' band together and be the 3 female.
But
Jedi.
That does sound like a story that Kathleen Kennedy would love.
I know.
Yes, it does.
That's where I was going.
Is female. Remember that.
I know. Although
the Spice Minds of Kessel Girls.
Yeah. Although it really isn't. If you just introduced, the story of Mortis and the
what, Brendan?
Oh my God! It just. I feel like it's just really kind of too late at this point that if you're trying to do this Heir to the Empire and Luke's going to show up and, help defeat Thrawn, it just, okay, great. And that's probably the only way to even save this story at this point is you've got to have Luke show up.
Honestly, I'm kind of even, I hate to say this, but I'm kind of checked out.
Yeah, is it even worth saving it?
This is what I hope happens, because they're gonna do regardless of what people say on the internet, The Acolyte is coming out. That show is finished. It's been in pre-production or post-production for months.
Right.
It's coming out probably next March or somewhere around there. It might even be earlier than that because of the strike. Skeleton Crew is gonna come out. After that, we don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. Daycare in space, as far as I can tell. But, so we know these things are going to happen. I just hope whenever they do, I have no faith that the Rey movie they want to do is going to succeed the way they hope it will.
Well, not with this crew. I mean, it's a good idea to.
But I don't think there's enough. Even if you replace Kathleen Kennedy and everybody at Lucasfilm that thinks like Kathleen Kennedy, I just don't think there's enough drive behind the sequel trilogy as a brand to get a successful franchise moving forward. if it were, Galaxy's Edge would be doing better, and the Galactic Star Cruiser wouldn't have closed.
Yeah.
So you're saying that the only good stories left to tell are in between episode 3, episode 4?
No, I'm saying that right now what needs to happen is whatever is on the books, they just need to finish off. And when it doesn't make money, because I don't think it will, I have very little faith in that, they need to take a 5 to 10 year break from Star Wars. And then they need to start over way back in the Old Republic somewhere where they have no canon to fuck up. Because Star Wars at this point is oversaturated, and the quality has been meh to bad, with occasional bright spots of really good stuff. And I just don't think I think they've alienated too much of their core fan base. And I think everybody needs a break. And I think absence makes the heart grow fonder. And I don't think Disney will do this, by the way. I really don't.
Oh, God, no.
But I think they would benefit from a 5 to 10 year break.
It's interesting that we talk about that because we are celebrating the 60th anniversary of Doctor Who next month. The biggest thing, what's the word I'm looking for? The best thing that Doctor Who ever did was, after 26 years of doing this show, numerous doctors, viewership falling off, was actually stop the show and take a break. By the time they rebooted it 16 years later, even after a failed American movie that introduced the Eighth Doctor, people were reinvigorated with Doctor Who.
And it had great snappy writing and a charismatic lead in Christopher Eccleston.
Right. Even with some of the bad writing, people still love Doctor Who. But we are kind of getting to that threshold where we need to do a new season of Doctor Who every 2 or 3 years at this point. Although I'm very, very hopeful with Russell T Davies coming back. But that kind of made people realize how great Doctor Who was, and people who have gone back to watch classic Doctor Who, even with, some of the more campier 80s series, post Tom Baker. I'm wondering, is that what Star Wars needs? Because as much as we love the original trilogy, and as bad as Episode 1, really was, that 16-year hiatus that we had reinvigorated Star Wars fans, and I think it also helped bring in a whole new generation, people that also started reading the books and hoping that we were going to get something like that. So I don't want Star Wars to be gone for over a decade, but I think Disney, I agree with you, needs to take a break. And
we took a 20-year break between the prequel, the original and the prequels, and a 15 year break, 15-year, I guess, break between. Well, no, it was about 10 because
it was a 10-year break between Episode 3 and Episode 7.
So I don't think it'll take much, another 5 to 10 years, and people will be ready to dive into Star Wars again, especially if you have a new regime in at Lucasfilm and they manage to put out a different product.
Yeah.
That is good, and I don't know what that could be, because they've really screwed up Willow, and Indiana Jones we've lamented that already.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what that could be. Maybe they get something really creative and they come up with, the next Lucasfilm product. And maybe you even bring in George to be a part of that construction.
So, I think you've read more books than I have, Brendan, of the expanded universe. Cade Skywalker, that storyline is about 100 years after Return of the Jedi, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I didn't read a lot of Cade's story. I read almost everything that Luke was in, and I read most of the Old Republic and
right
Rebellion era.
But my point is with him, but he's was he the great grandson or grandson?
Something like that. I think it's grandson, but yeah,
that was Legacy. Wasn't that Star Wars Legacy?
Yeah, well, that's the old.
My point is, by the time you get to his adventures, you're kind of so far removed of Luke and his time and Ben and, the Solo twins and all of that stuff that I don't know if reset is the right word, but it's a whole new kind of generation, of the Republic. And I think for the books that they did fairly well, looking at the legacy characters of our beloved. And maybe that's also kind of what you need is, explore those things.
Well, yeah. How about they do a some sort of a screen adaptation of Splinter of the Mind's Eye, or here's a crazy idea: do a remastered Shadows of the Empire game and do a freaking movie.
I mean, I would love that. I mean, of course, Knights of the Republic. Everybody wants to see something in that time frame.
Yeah.
But if you want to pander to the legacy fan base, you've got two properties right there that you can just go crazy with.
So we don't know when he was born, but he died in 138 ABY.
Okay.
But it just says that he was the descendant of Luke and Anakin.
I bring that point up. I had a friend who she's reading my fantasy book, and we were talking about fantasy and tropes and everything because she's a huge fantasy fan, and of course, then because she's a composer, we were talking about music. But she was asking me why this was like 100 years, and why I did that. I was like, I think you have to establish a point in your story where it's so far removed from something that happened that it's almost there's this huge mystery. People don't really know what to believe. They're just stories. They don't know whether they were true or not. And that's where you can it gives you a chance to reset a timeline and then you're off to the races with your stories. And I think part of one thing the sequel trilogy did right is because they were so far removed from Return of the Jedi and the Jedi that not everybody still believed that the Jedi were real. But then again, you're really only 15 years after. So that also was like, really though? I mean, are we so far removed that we don't think that they were real? 100 years past something.
Come on, and seriously, like the New Republic wouldn't make Luke Skywalker the poster boy of the New Republic and use him as a PR marketing tool. Like it just, is it John Lasseter, right? Who used to be at Pixar and is now at Skydance.
Yeah.
One of the things I forget what the 3 rules are, but he says there's 3 rules for creating a movie world, and one of it is it has to be believable and not realistic. It doesn't have to be realistic, but it has to be believable within the world that you've set up.
Right.
And Disney really does a bad job at that, because here you have when Luke Skywalker shows up, Moff Gideon is terrified of him because he knows that Luke Skywalker went into a room with Darth Vader and the Emperor, and both of them are dead, and he's still alive.
The other one that came out alive. Yeah.
So he's to the point he's ready to shoot himself in the head. Okay, that's
Literally,
how scared of Luke Skywalker he is. Yeah, Cara Dune had to stop him.
Yeah.
So you juxtapose that. It's like all the Imperials know him. He is literally the boogeyman to the Imperials now.
He's the John Wick of a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, he is the
Baba Yaga of the Baba Yagan.
Yeah, so you've got that, but then nobody in the New Republic's heard of him 15, 20 years later? Are you fucking serious?
Yeah,
no. This would be he would be all over the place. And that's another thing that just didn't make sense about the sequel trilogy. And one thing that Mark Hamill himself hated was, what do you mean he's been sitting around for 10 years? Like, no, he might sulk for 6 months, but then he's going to get up off his ass and try and rebuild the Order, because that's what Jedi do, And so it bugs me how inconsistent Disney is with their own lore and their own storytelling. Like, for example, Anakin coming to check in on Ahsoka all these times. Great. Why hasn't Anakin at any point since, his death popped into Luke and said, "Hey, by the way, might want to go to Exegol," because they were dumb. They were so dumb to write that comic that Darth Vader knew about Exegol before Jedi. So now you've put yourself into the position where either redeemed Anakin as an asshole, or
Luke is just selfish and won't do anything about it.
Because Anakin has gone to him off screen. So either Luke's incompetent or Anakin's an asshole.
No,
that's a stupid corner to write yourself into.
That comic, I mean, if you want to write Darth Vader adventures and all that, that's fine. But God, that was a stupid fucking storyline. I agree with you about not understanding their own lore or writing themselves into a corner. But that's why I brought up the point of the expanded universe. If you're going to be so fucking dumb with your writing, then use what's already out there so you don't fucking screw it up. Because apparently you can't be that creative without screwing it up.
And what kills me about it is that, like, the EU wasn't without its own contradictions, but the whole point of getting rid of the EU and rebooting the lore outside of the movies and the television shows was so that the books, the cartoons, the live action shows, the movies, the comics, you would set up this Lucas story group to make sure everything, you had a clearinghouse of information where you had these Lucas experts, these Star Wars experts, were going to scan everything to make sure that nothing overlapped and nothing contradicted each other. That's how it was all sold to us.
If you only had a wiki database.
Right. But yet they keep overlapping themselves and they keep contradicting themselves. It's like the very first book they wrote, they had Luke trying to use the Jedi mind trick because he actually had seen it done, and he made an ass out of himself in front of a girl he liked. But then a year later, we get the first movie, and Rey's getting a stormtrooper without ever having heard of a Jedi mind trick. She's getting a stormtrooper to drop his gun, unlock her, and walk away, who, by the way, was 007.
And you know what? If the whole point is when he probes her mind, he unlocks something, okay, but you got to explain that.
Well, not only that, but that's never happened anywhere else in Star Wars canon. So when did we start downloading things like the Matrix?
That's my point. Even if it's never happened, you at least have to explain it so people make it believable. There's a great line. What was it? Thank you for not smoking. When he goes off to Hollywood and he's talking to the Hollywood producer played by Rob Lowe, and I don't even remember necessarily the situation, but it was all like, but how are you going to get around cigarettes causing cancer in your movie? And Rob Lowe's like, it's one line to explain that it doesn't. That's it. One simple line in dialogue, and we've explained that away. I'm like,
we come up with a tobacco that's free of carcinogens. Done.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, a carcinogen-free tobacco, which, by the way, I would smoke the shit out of. But
Brendan, can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
I can't quit laughing. Okay, you've moved. Now you've moved, and my point.
Yeah, because I got my Johnny Bravo going.
Yes.
Man, I'm pretty. Whoa,
that's all I could see. No, when you sit dead center like that, all I could see is
man, I'm pretty.
Anyway,
so
okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But
We
yeah,
got to move on. But
one last contradiction I just want to hit you with real quick. So Hera disobeys orders, gets some people killed, goes to the New Republic, and Leia bails her out. So why then does she slap Poe in the face and demote him for doing the same thing, except he actually achieved something?
He's not wrong.
Again, they can't get their own lore right.
Nobody pays attention to the stories they've already written. Wait,
no.
Dave Filoni didn't even watch the sequel movies because they were that bad.
He was involved with helping to write them.
Well, he was involved with some things, but
yeah, well, he was supposedly the lore guy for both Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams.
Well,
we are talking about a film.
That doesn't mean that they actually listen. I think Henry Cavill and The Witcher, that whole fiasco proved that we don't really care what the actual lore is. We're going to do what we want to do because we don't like this stuff that we're writing to begin with. It sucks that we have to work on this show.
I'm past The Witcher at this point. I'm just looking forward to Henry slaying heretics in Warhammer 40K.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. We'll see, what happens and what they announce and all that. But it's just Disney, you're burning too many bridges at this point. And I commented with a friend that I went to school with, who's always posting about Ahsoka. It was like, doesn't it just make you really want to go back and read one of the greatest trilogies ever, Heir to the Empire, where they did it right? He's like, yeah, it's too bad we really can't actually get those books made.
Where Thrawn was scary. Somebody had a great line on YouTube, and it was, they've written Thrawn as what a dumb person thinks an intelligent person is like. It's how a stupid person thinks an intelligent person acts. So it's like these just dumb decisions covered with this thin veneer of intellectualism.
So it's galactic idiocracy, basically. That's
a great way of putting it. I like that.
There's a lot to be said for the animated shows, the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. I feel like you can do a lot more, and there's a part of me that after watching this season, I'm kind of like, I didn't really need the live action. You did so well with season 7 of the Clone Wars with Ahsoka. You probably should have just told this story as season 5 of Rebels and been done with it. But it's neither here or there. So personally, I did give it a 7. Chad, what did you give Ahsoka season 1?
About the same. It's just, and that's begrudgingly, just because I was happy to see the people that we did get to see. I'm still pissed off that we got 10 seconds of Zeb in Andor or wherever the hell. I can't even remember where the hell they showed Zeb.
Mando season 3.
Season 3. Yeah, but we couldn't get him in this. Okay, whatever.
I don't know. And Brendan, I'm almost afraid to ask, but what's your low grade for this? You gave it a 5. So you said it was average. Wow, I thought you were about to go.
I'm grading on a curve at this point. I mean, if I'm grading it against House of the Dragon, I'm giving it a 2. If I'm grading it against other Disney Plus shows,
okay, that is fair. Hey, at least it wasn't Willow. My God, why was that even made?
Willow wasn't even Willow.
My favorite picture that I knew all I needed to know about Willow when I watched the trailer, and I saw a girl with a I'm sorry, my brain is just dying, but the sheath for arrows, the bow and arrow quiver. Thank you. I couldn't think of the damn word quiver for some reason. Anyway, but inside her quiver were arrows with plastic fletching.
Okay. Allison is still kind of mad that I recut the trailer with the Beverly Hills 90210 theme song. And I'm like,
that's
I'm not. Yeah, but I'm not wrong.
No, you're not. And like okay, it's supposed to be a medieval fantasy. Is it really that hard to get wood shaft arrows with feather fletching? No, it really isn't. You can just Google it and order them.
They're on Amazon.
It's like, what did you do? Like, did you guys forget she needed arrows and then send some intern down to Dick's Sporting Goods or Shields to get plastic fletched arrows?
Right. Yeah. All right, we're going to close this podcast out with talking about summer blockbusters. We had kind of a lot of failures and maybe one or two good movies. Do you guys have any pick for what do you feel like is the clear winner? Like, what was the best movie of the summer? We know it's not Indiana Jones.
Well, from a financial standpoint, I mean, that's pretty obvious. It's Barbie.
Right.
Barbie was the clear financial winner. From as far as from a quality standpoint of what I really liked, I guess the two that would have to stand out for me would have been, and now I can't remember one, so I guess it didn't stand out that much. But Chad, why don't you go ahead? I'm just tired and I'm losing.
Yeah, I'm in the same. I've literally got to look.
Hey,
so
give me a list. Shit.
Well,
obviously, John Wick 4 was,
John Wick 4 was a big hit for me. Oppenheimer was a big hit for me.
Okay.
This is what I was looking for because there was one other one a third one that I really liked, and I'm trying to. And now, of course,
the only thing that I did not like about Oppenheimer, unfortunately, I didn't really want to sit for 3 hours in the theater, and we started our press screening late. I didn't even get a chance to catch up with Beth when she was here in town that night because it was so late. But the music was still just fucking grinding. It felt like
it was. I actually had to watch it at home because I didn't want to do that in the theater after sitting through the problems I had sitting through Dunkirk. But if so, the other ones I thought were really good were Across the Spider-Verse. Mission Impossible was a big hit for me. I really liked that. I was sad that it underperformed because I thought it was an excellent movie, especially for a part one.
Right.
Yeah, and I guess those were the four for me because other than that,
I liked Oppenheimer. I really did. But I'm at the point now of like 3-hour movies. I really want to just watch at home on my couch. I can't do the theater anymore. And granted,
unless, as we've said many times, not unless they're going to put that intermission back in.
For me, I think John Wick was really good. It's not my favorite John Wick movie. I liked Barbie for what it is. I really did. But I'm with you on Mission Impossible. I feel like Tom Cruise really kind of came out with the best movie of the summer.
Again.
It was certainly the most fun.
Yeah.
Like the most, like, you go to a movie, let's be honest. All right. For the most part, people go to a movie theater for 2 hours, maybe 2.5 of escapism and fun. And while Barbie certainly delivered that to a certain audience, to my audience, that was Mission Impossible. While Oppenheimer is a very well done film, it's very much cinema. It's not just a popcorn movie, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I agree.
And Cillian Murphy did a really good job.
Yeah, and he always does. I mean, he's a phenomenally talented actor. But just if you wanted 2 hours to go to the movies and have fun, and just mindless fun, then Tom Cruise, I mean, he rarely misses. He does. It happens. Just not often.
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
It was good. I wasn't sure we were including that in summer because it came out in March.
No, Guardians of the Galaxy came out at the beginning of May.
Yeah, it came out in May. Yeah.
Oh, God, it just feels like it's been since March. Okay. It's been a long year, folks. What can I tell you? Then yes, Guardians was good. It was probably the least of the three Guardians movies.
Oh yeah,
but not egregiously so. It wasn't like
out of all of the superhero movies, I feel like it's the best. Yeah. I still like the Flash movie. I know you hate it. I still like it, but I also recognize that Guardians of the Galaxy is the better movie. The reason I was asking about Gran Turismo before the podcast, before we started recording, is, to me, that's my second favorite. I just was so pleasantly surprised by how good it is. We didn't expect much. Video game movies are very hit and miss. Yes, it was based on a true story, but you could so easily screw it up. And it made it even better knowing that the real driver did all the stunt work for the movie. And David Arbor was just fantastic, but he's generally fantastic in everything he does.
really
But
looking
between
forward to
that,
Silent Night or Violent Night 2.
oh God, you're waiting for Christmas to be here because you're going to watch that as part of your yearly. I gotcha.
Oh yeah, I mean that, and I'm gonna listen to the rock and roll version of The Grinch by Small Town Titans. If you haven't heard it, it's fantastic. Go on YouTube and check it out.
There's a house over here by me that does a light show, and they set it to that.
Yeah,
Nice.
and I'm gonna listen to that, and I'm gonna go watch Violent Night, and that's gonna kick off my Christmas season. I still think Nether Realms. I love you guys. I love Mortal Kombat. It's been my fighting favorite series since 1989 or 92, whatever it came out. 91.
91.
So I knew it was somewhere around my 6th, 7th grade year. Anyway,
Shut
up. But y'all missed an opportunity. Like David Harbour Santa with that finisher on John Leguizamo, that just screams fatality.
Yeah.
I yelled out fatality in the theater when he did it. I was just like, everybody was going, ooh, and I just went, fatality. Like, as loud as I could, and everybody, like 20 people around me, just started laughing.
Yeah.
And I was like,
very, very true.
And it was the first time I've ever like yelled out at a theater and gotten an applause for it since I guess everybody was, because I went to when I saw Starship Troopers in the theater. It was the same night that the Marine Corps had their ball in 1997, and so everybody else on the base who wasn't a Marine went to go see Starship Troopers. So I went to see Starship Troopers with an entire theater full of soldiers, sailors, and airmen.
Yeah.
There was a lot of screaming at the screen, especially when Michael Ironside pulls out the beer.
As it should be.
Yeah.
And, this is, I feel like we're still kind of reeling from the pandemic in some ways. I mean, I don't know why we've had so many bombs at the box office. I mean, it could be lack of good writing. Tom Cruise always delivers. We were talking about one of his movies that came out towards the summer, American Made, where he's the drug smuggler. It's actually on Netflix right now. And I rewatched it the other day. I'm like, no, is it his greatest work? Absolutely not. Is he a little over the top with his Southern accent? Sure. Not as bad as Kevin Costner with his Boston accent in 13 Days, but...
Or his British accent in Robin Hood.
I was going to say, or Tom Cruise with his Irish accent in Far and Away.
Far and Away.
But, like, I think the biggest problem Hollywood, I think Martin Scorsese kind of sort of hit it on the head, because he's very much against the Marvel franchise style of cinema, and he calls it a theme park instead of actual cinema. And I think he's almost right. The problem is with Hollywood, along with a lot of other types of entertainment medium, video games, TV, whatever. It's a very copycat business, and everybody's looking for the next big franchise instead of concerning themselves with making good movies. And I think there are probably a lot of great scripts out there that aren't being made because everybody's looking for the next big blockbuster, franchise.
Yeah.
And I think there needs to be, a little more. We need less sequels. I'm not saying franchises and sequels don't have their place, but Hollywood right now has got a case of sequelitis because they're seen as safe bets for big money. And when you're talking about a big corporation, that's kind of what they do. So I think the safe bets for big money, and especially the success of Marvel as a huge franchise that's gone for a decade, has really hurt other filmmakers and other styles of film, because the production houses, your Sony Pictures, your Paramount Pictures, your all of the, MGM. Well, I guess MGM's owned by Amazon now, but all of these big production houses, they're looking for those big money safe bets, and so that stifles creativity a little bit. And I think, honestly, in the long run, the current decline of Marvel and Star Wars might actually be a good thing for the rest of movies, the rest of cinema.
Scorsese can complain about those kinds of movies all he wants, but you can't make all of your movies art films and expect them to be on the same. And that's his issue.
Yes, and I agree. That's why I say he's almost right, but he takes it a little too far.
Right. But at the same time, when the biggest movie you've ever had, The Departed, is basically just a ripoff of something else and not truly creative, you're being hypocritical.
Oh, I agree.
So it's like, I am not knocking you as a filmmaker. You have a very particular style of filmmaking, just like Quentin Tarantino does. Stick within your lane. If one of them hits and everybody loves it and you make more money than you ever have, that's great. But you're also not going to do that when you're making 3.5-hour movies and expect people to go to the theater to watch it on what should be a 2-hour story. If you know anything about Killers of the Flower Moon, you know what fucking happens. It's also a pretty obvious storyline that, again, oil was discovered on Indian land. So, of course, white people are going to come in and kill them off and try to steal the rights because that's what they do. I
100% get what you're saying. And for me, it's just, it's less about the style of movie and more about it being the industry as a whole being a victim of its own success. And that those big corporations, when they see that big money, they're just going to keep throwing money at it because they think they're going to keep getting that big money back, and that stifles the opportunity for creativity in other areas. Well, and it's not so much the movies themselves that are their problem; it's the corporations behind them.
But you can also make really good independent films that do take off, and everything.
You can, as long as the corporations are willing to fund them.
Everything, everywhere, all at once proved that last year by being the darling of last year's, cinema. And it is a great movie, but also give credit to Tom Cruise, who knows how to entertain, sticks within his lane and says, I'm making it. And when he does kind of independent stuff that's outside of his norm, it's not necessarily about, making money. He can do his independent films like Magnolia, which isn't going to make a lot of money, but he'll get noticed as broadening his range. Last Samurai, not really a big budget movie, but still highly entertaining. It's a war movie. He knows what he knows how to entertain, and you need that. The same way that, to me, it's the same thing with John Wayne. John Wayne basically made the same films over and over because he knew how to entertain people and he knew how to properly do movies with a great hero. Okay. Brannigan, very underrated movie where he's a Chicago cop that goes to England and hunts down a criminal. Well, what's the difference between that movie and any other fucking Western that he did? He's the same character, except that he's carrying a different kind of gun.
Yeah.
But they're still highly entertaining. So the truly great independent films that surprise everybody, that's kind of what the film festivals are for, where they do get talked about and people realize that, oh, wow, you can make kind of a small movie and it does, take off. And maybe you have a few films that completely surprise you on a very, very low budget and do things like the Blair Witch Project did. Okay. So I think there's two different kinds of cinema.
Well, and I think there's even films in between that too. I mean, it doesn't have to be either big blockbuster or independent. There can be smaller, studio films or just one-offs that are just good self-contained stories.
Yeah.
And we're seeing less and less of those because of the big franchise blockbuster.
Another person I kind of credit is Adam Sandler, who found a great deal with Netflix, puts out good movies that are outside of what we grew up with.
Yeah,
he is very much matured as an actor. Hustle is one of my favorite Adam Sandler movies, where he's the basketball scout. Basketball scout. Uncut Gems was another great one, and the one You're So Not Invited to My Bar Mitzvah as literally the most Jewish movie you could ever make. But him knowing who he is as the embarrassing Jewish father, it was really funny. So it's, I just want studios to kind of recognize the difference in filmmaking. Make your big budgets. Don't overinflate it with your marketing budget when you don't have a really good story. Indiana Jones, okay, and take a chance on some smaller films that might actually surprise you. Barbie was not a big budget film, and it did take off, and it's the big success story. So anyway, we'll see what the fall is all about. I am already not excited for the Aquaman movie.
Like, first of all, it's the last movie from a dead franchise.
Right.
Number one. And number two, I have no desire to see a movie with Amber Turd in it.
No.
I just don't really care at this point. I mean, I'm actually more excited to see Jason Momoa in the next Fast and the Furious movie because he was such a fun villain. It's like, I think Justin Lin literally just said to him, do anything you want to do, and we're going to film it. And he did. So, not saying Fast and the Furious 10 is a good...
I hope they recast him as Lobo, because that's who
Yes!
he should have been cast as in the first place.
Thank you. That's what I was about to say. Damn it, Brendan.
Hey,
well,
we're right here, man.
All right, well, we're back for the fall. We obviously have more fun stuff to talk about. Our next podcast, we're actually going to be talking about for a little bit, the 30th anniversary of one of the greatest television shows, The X-Files, which truly made conspiracy theories pop culture. Also kind of find it hilarious how some of it is actually coming true. But anyway, we will be back, and we'll get another progress report of Baldur's Gate. I mean, Brendan's going to get to the end and tell us how it all ends at some point.
Well, I mean, even how it ends for me might not be how it ends for you. So
that is very, very true. When
we see Brendan, he's going to be this big around. And like, I'm on hour 970.
Well, I'll be on my like 8th playthrough by then. So
I am going to end this by saying two things. EA, we know you want to reinvent the wheel for your new video games and give us new technology to make it more accurate and all that. But this is literally the first year that I am not buying the new NHL or the new FIFA because they just really aren't that good. And if your NHL game, by making it so accurate, means I can't fucking score a goal even on rookie level, you made a shit game. Also, it does break my heart as a Chicago Blackhawks fan that this was literally the first year that I tried playing an NHL game and I did not have Patrick Kane or Jonathan Taves. It's the first time in 17 years.
So one last video game thing real quick before we go.
Sure.
Is anybody familiar with the Unity debacle, the Unity engine debacle? So the Unity engine is a video game engine that a lot of independent developers use to make video games. It's very easy to use, and it was fairly inexpensive to buy the license for. They tried to put out a post-launch pricing model to where if your game launched and did, X amount of sales, that you would have to pay them more money. And they were going after two big games that use Unity, Pokemon Go and Genshin Impact. Okay, because these games make millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And they wanted a little piece of that revenue. But they didn't take into account how it would affect developers that barely crossed their threshold. It would have literally put them out of business because they would have actually owed more revenue than the games took in. So it blew up on Twitter. Everybody lost their mind at this. And Unity stock tanked, which, by the way, there's still probably an SEC investigation coming because days before this happened, this news leaked and their stock tanked. All of the C-suite sold off a shit ton of stock.
Oops.
Damn.
Wow, how very
Now-
gecko of you.
Now, the CEO of this company is a name that some of you might remember. His name is John Riccatello. And if you remember that name, it's because he used to be the head of EA. He had to resign today as CEO, president, and chairman of the board of Unity. And this, folks, for the gaming industry, is addition by subtraction. Because John Riccatello is one of the most heinous pieces of shit in gaming. This is a man who one time during an EA earnings call when he was still the CEO there said that he envisioned a bright future for gaming where in online shooter games, like in Battlefield, the big EA competitor to Call of Duty, he envisioned it where you would have to pay a transaction fee of $1 to reload your gun while in game. He called that the bright future for gaming. So, John, the fact that you are no longer employed by a gaming entity as of today warms what's left of my dead heart. And I wish
He had a nice
you
golden parachute deal.
fair winds and following seas to fuck off to whatever frigging company you want to go to that isn't in the gaming industry. Nobody likes you. Nobody wants you. Take your ball and go home.
Karma spoke, it bitch slapped you, and sent you on home.
That's great.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And by the way, I
sometimes there's
really
a-
hope the SEC calls you. I really do.
Oh, God, yeah.
And by the way, when all that came out, everybody was tagging, hey, at SEC.gov, you seeing this?
And now we have the story for Dumb Money 2.
No
Yep.
shit.
The Big Short.
Damn.
Wall Street 3.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's just, again, there is a little justice in the world. All right, everybody, we're going to wrap this up and we will be back throughout the month. It is Halloween, so definitely we want to hear about your favorite Halloween movies that still stand the test of time. I do want to comment on this. At some point, they have to acknowledge that Michael Myers is some kind of demon and doesn't die or bionic because he's been shot, blown up, fire.
Basically, he's been killed in as many different ways as Vigo
Right.
from fucking Ghostbusters 2.
Right. But the fucking meat grinder finally kills him.
Mhm.
However, they are talking about making more Halloween movies. Stop. Just stop at some point.
Is he the Blob now?
Hey, I love David Gordon Green and I love Danny McBride. But if you want to make another sequel of something that sort of, that's good, I'll take a Pineapple Express too. Anyway. All right, everybody, it's time to say goodbye.
Goodbye,
care.
everybody.